Uncertainty tolerance is a relatively new trait, so it's not in the normal management or leadership handbook. From what we've seen, and we've seen about 20,000 people internationally from a business community go through the research, leaders tend to have a slightly higher tolerance for uncertainty, so it is driven by experience. It's important to note, though, that it's a state and not a trait, so it's something that's malleable and can be adapted. If world events take a turn, then everyone's uncertainty tolerance can be negatively affected. And critically, it's one of those states which is influenced and infected by others around you. So if you can increase the team's uncertainty tolerance, that can begin to lift an entire business unit's uncertainty tolerance as well. The key differentiator for individuals and organizations who demonstrate a high tolerance to uncertainty seems to be around innovation. Now, there's numerous aspects to uncertainty tolerance. That's why it's so important right now. It's what's known as a transdiagnostic issue, because one aspect of uncertainty's negative effects can be around well-being and mental health. Another can be it influences decision-making. It slows decision-making down. But another area where its real benefits seem to be so clear is in innovation, in problem-solving, because something about uncertainty tolerance allows people to get out of the well-furrowed tracks, which can so often in business take the place of innovation, where it's a very similar idea to one we've seen before, but with a new name. Uncertainty tolerance allows people to step outside the familiar and into what might even be called negative space, where genuinely new ideas can emerge. The key things that really stand out with a firm where you can tell the uncertainty tolerance is high is adaptiveness. Adaptiveness to something, to a genuinely new idea. And I think for many organizations and individuals, that response time of recovery over bad news is really the kind of indicator. It's definitely the indicator for me. How long I hold a grudge for is probably indicative of where I am with my own uncertainty tolerance. So when we've seen a firm, we worked with retail leaders from Apple across all of the different Apple stores around the world, and the Apple stores, like lots of retail units, had a very choppy time during the pandemic. And the very interesting thing began to emerge with the leaders in the store. And they have this very open policy anyway, so not everyone is coming in to ask about Apple products. And they began to take this exact technique, a response being from a store leader to a customer or to their teams, if the answer isn't known, to embrace the unknown and to use it as an opportunity to create a connection with your audience or your team member. And so the exact line came, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that together we can find it out. So you've turned this moment of not knowing into a moment for relationship growing and strengthening. And isn't that a nice level of honesty to suddenly find with someone who you thought had all the answers, but now you know that together we're going to work them out. And so your experience and everything has just increased. And that seems to be the case. Certainly from the initial interviews that I did, which were very unusual, let's say. They certainly weren't from the likes of Lego and Apple. They were much more informal entrepreneurs. But their acute ability to spot the opportunity in times of uncertainty, that was what separated them. And now we've extrapolated this work into large organizations. It remains the same. So it's that agility, that response rate, and what that enables you to do is rather than, now we can just see the problems and the things that I need to mitigate, there's the chance. There's the simple maneuver. There's my chance. I've found something to liberate. It's a frightening prediction, but uncertainty is the only certainty. And in a way, that's nothing new. There is now a World Uncertainty Index, which tells us these are the most uncertain times that humans and leaders and businesses have ever been through. But arguably, that's always been the same for every generation. However, the difference at the moment is that there is such confluence, convergence over so many important factors. So the rise of artificial intelligence and the fear that comes with that, the vulnerability of supply chains around the world, the unpredictability of climate and the events that can now be seen to have on supply chains, the interconnectedness of everything as demonstrated in the pandemic. So it's almost as if the fragility is greater than ever. And the most difficult thing I perceive in leaders is to be able to make good decisions in fragile times, because it's not part of the traditional leadership lexicon. I sometimes worry at the moment the only real honest answer for any leader out there making predictions can only ever be, I don't know. Certainly, as I grew up learning business, I don't know was never a very compelling response. So it demonstrates the paradox of the moment. How do you say, I don't know, in a compelling way? How do you say, I don't know, but I believe in you, and my team and this business and our opportunities, and then lead accordingly. I think it's a real strength and a real opportunity for leaders to step into the unknown if they can bring their teams with them. Because in that unknown space lie real and new answers, and that's what's needed more than anything else. The danger in times of uncertainty, when the prediction is so clear, and this has been demonstrated again and again around the world, is people look to backward-looking narratives. It sits behind phrases like making whatever places great again or building back better. And so the danger for leaders is, as we approach uncertainty, to look backwards, because it can be even scarier to look forwards. And the risk there is trying to project or present false certainty, when it's sometimes scarier, but more honest and more rewarding to be able to say convincingly, compellingly, we don't know, but together we're going to work it out. For leaders, I think it is a very difficult time because it is a new set of narratives that are required. On one hand, we know that trust is more important than ever and lower in many different sectors than ever. And to build trust, you need rapport, you need clear communications, you need authenticity, you need vulnerability. Again, a number of things that aren't in every leader's immediate toolkit. But the other end of the spectrum, people want confidence. People want reassurance. People are quite sick and exhausted of so much uncertainty. So it's a very difficult space for leaders, I think, at the moment, to tell the truth and say we don't know, and use that opportunity to invite some creativity and genuinely new thinking. But you've got a group of people in your teams often who don't want any more uncertainty, who want that sense as well. It's a tough call to make. We've been very lucky in the work we're doing to have been called in, even though it's at a fairly early stage, with Netflix, Lego, Apple, many other forward-thinking firms around the world. And they're really trying to hold this space. And one of the things we've really seen is to try and use doubt as a place of discovery. So we've zeroed in on doubt because it's universally seen as a negative thing. But for a leader to be able to, and it follows on from the very useful work that's been done around psychological safety. When a team find themselves in doubt, for the leader to hold space so the team doesn't feel rushed to make a decision. There's a great study from, I think it was Harvard Business Review. It said 94% of leaders would rather be seen as having made a bad decision than be indecisive. And think what a killer that is. If everyone prefers to have been seen making a bad decision, and so this is the technique for a leader, to hold space for indecision. Do we feel like we're a great decision yet, the best decision? If not, then I will hold that space for you. And if we begin to learn how we can tolerate doubt, we'll begin to find it as a place of discovery rather than the place we've been recently, which is just, I want to reverse out of here as quick as I can. And the price of that will be the best decision that we can make. So for leaders specifically, holding doubt, beginning to reframe doubt, sometimes as a place of possibility and sometimes even discovery, is one way you can begin to increase a team's uncertainty tolerance in a not too scary way. There's a few things to bear in mind. Developing uncertainty tolerance in a team. Uncertainty is the number one driver of anxiety globally. It's also the number one driver of economic instability. And it turns out it's also the number one driver of conflict that we have. So it's not an easy place to spend too much time in. Also, uncertainty, it's really important for leaders to get their heads and bodies around it because it's a psychobiological issue. There's a familiar management consultants framework called the VUCA framework to try and explain the world currently. Lots of people have heard of it. The interesting thing I find is that amidst volatility, complexity, and ambiguity, uncertainty is the one that's also an emotion. You really feel it, and you really feel it deeply. And this is really important to how we get better at it, because the body registers it as a threat. And so we have a biological response to it. And when you're in prolonged uncertainty, it does become exhausting because your body goes into states of high arousal, alertness, and awareness. Now, this creates the space of why this is an opportunity. Because in a state of uncertainty, we are pushed into our optimum states of learning. Like the brain really goes into hyperdrive because it's perceived a threat, so it becomes highly attentive. It's primed for information gathering. So it's an optimum state for getting stuff done, but it has to be a temporary state. So this is the kind of watchword for building a team's uncertainty tolerance, is to do it in small bursts. To find a new challenge and a problem we don't have an answer to, great. Hold that negative space of not knowing for as long as you can. And universally, new ideas will begin to emerge, but don't let it be a permanent state. Have a cool time on the indecision and then return back to it at a later stage.